Design, comparisons, display, cameras, software, gaming, and finally benchmarks. This is my unboxing and extremely detailed review of the Realme X7 Pro. We have the pricing straight out of China at the top right corner, starting at a minimal $320 USD. There is no headphone jack on the phone, so we get bundled with a little adapter over there. We also have a little SIM ejector tool, and we do have a USB, a Type A to Type C cord in the box for USB 2.0 transfer speeds. Also get that wonderful Super Dart charger that we have up to 65 watts, paired with an impressive 4,500 mAh battery. The color that I have here is known as the rainbow color. It says dare to leap at the back, and the colors shift as you reflect light off of the back surface. It looks absolutely fantastic. I haven't quite seen anything like it with that massive logo. I guess it's kind of if you like it or you don't. The power button has a raised lip there in order for you to feel. It's nice and clean at the top, and we have a split volume rock on the left hand side, which is always nice. I think all smartphones should adapt this. We have a dual SIM tray, but no support for micro SD, and we unfortunately only have USB 2.0 speeds. We have dual stereo speakers over here, and yes, we do have Dolby Atmos included in the software department. We do have that wonderful frosted back glass, though it is prone to a ton of fingerprints, so slap on the included cover over there. Doesn't look too bad, though it has a bit of a tint to the cover, so you kind of lose that wonderful glow that the phone has to offer. Looks absolutely stunning from the back, but we do have that wonderful camera bump over there. Not quite as big as other smartphones out there, but it is still quite a hefty one, so you're going to want to use the included case or splurge for an extra one. On the table, though, it doesn't quite rock as much as other phones out there, and at the back it has a very unique design. Actually, all of these devices have extremely unique designs, and when it comes to weight, it's just 184 grams, which is lighter than any other flagship out there, let alone a mid-range phone with so much juice inside of it. So it looks stunning from the back, like I said, but what about the front? Well, we get a 20:9 aspect ratio, 6.55 inch AMOLED display with 16 million colors. It is full HD plus resolution with 402 ppi. We also have HDR10 plus, and we get a peak brightness of 1200 nits with 120 Hz refresh rate panel and 240 Hz touch sampling to boot. As you can see, color reproduction on all phones look pretty decent these days, nothing to complain about, and brightness levels are looking right up there with the best of the best when looking at the Mi 10 Ultra on the right and the OnePlus 8 Pro, as well as the K30 Ultra all the way on the left hand side. Comparing it to the K30 Ultra, which is pretty much its biggest rival at the current moment, it has very similar bezels, and its bottom bezel is slightly tinier than that of the K30 on the left hand side, though the biggest selling point here is the 120 Hz panel. We usually see 90 on Realme devices, and comparing 60 to 120, it sucks that we don't have a 90 Hz option, since you can't really tell much of a difference between 90 and 120. I would have liked that option in order to save a bit of battery life. Nevertheless, it looks quite a bit better than 120 Hz. I can't really show you this on screen, you actually have to feel it for yourself, though it does a strange bit of ghosting on the 60 Hz and the 120 Hz respectively, comparing to the 120 Hz on the K30 Ultra. When we go through it, slowing down, the actual ghosting shows that you're seeing more frames on the screen, and sometimes the X7 Pro doesn't quite show that ghosting all the time. It seems more adaptive than anything, even when just using the home user interface. Comparing it to other 120 Hz smartphones out there, the Redmi K30 Ultra on the left and Mi 10 Ultra and OnePlus 8 Pro on the right hand side, it looks pretty decent, but like I was saying, you're seeing a lot less ghosting, which means that it is fluctuating a lot between 60 and 120 Hz, where the others are just sticking at 120, which kind of sucks. But we do have this awesome thing called smooth scrolling. We're going to enable it on the right hand side over there. It's disabled on the left hand side, and comparing it, it actually makes a big difference. It almost minimizes ghosting completely and still gives you that wonderful feel of 120 Hz. Most smartphone manufacturers should definitely implement this going forward. We also have a couple different settings that you can mix around with the display, including DC dimming in order to drop down screen flickering, and we have dark mode, which you usually see on AMOLED panels, though we can use it in third-party apps and even pop-up windows. We also have the wonderful always on display clock, which we usually get welcome to with an AMOLED display, and we don't have that many options, pretty much the same as we've seen from Realme in the past 2 years. This hasn't really changed much. It is nice and bright though, and colors are nice and deep with that black background. I like the simplicity of the basic ones, and going into the actual device itself, you have an under display optical fingerprint fingerprint sensor, and it is slightly quicker than the one seen on the Redmi K30 Ultra, but the K30 Ultra has quite a big animation speed over there, so if you're looking at raw sensors, it's pretty much on par. We also have a 2D face unlock option. It is not 3D unlock over here like you see on an iPhone or a Huawei device, but it does the job just right, though minimal security. Compared to the Redmi K30 Ultra, that one's quite a bit slower because you have to unlock the phone with the pop-up sensor, and it's pretty much a little bit quicker than the OnePlus 8 Pro when you don't have the pop-up involved. Talking about the camera, we have a 32 megapixel f2.5 selfie snapper, the same as seen as the main front-facing camera on the X50 Pro. It looks okay. I've turned the beautify specs off, but it still gives quite a bit of beauty.
What's up guys, this is TechNick recording a 1080p 30fps video using the selfie camera on the Realme X7 Pro. Let me know what you guys think of the video and audio quality when using the selfie cam video on the X7 Pro.
At the back, we have a 64 megapixel Sony IMX686 sensor with 4:1 pixel binning down to 16 megapixels, an ultra wide of 8 megapixels, and a macro and depth both with 2 megapixels. The predecessors X50 Pro and X2 Pro from Realme both had telephoto cameras, so it's a bit of a downgrade in that department. The 8 megapixel ultra wide with AI turned on looks fantastic. 64 megapixel main doesn't look the best, but it is pretty dark in the scene over here, pretty much going into sunset. And we also have the 2x zoom, which is digital. Unfortunately, no telephoto over here. 5x digital zoom doesn't look that great. 2x didn't look too bad, but 10x is the max zoom that you have, and it looks unusable. We also have the regular shot over here with natural bokeh effect, and actually enabling portrait mode over here, we get to use that 2 megapixel depth effect, which does a pretty decent job. You can also use that 2 megapixel macro sensor, though pretty useless most of the time. It doesn't average job, I would say. We have 1080p 60 fps with electronic image stabilization using the main camera when it comes to video. Unfortunately, with the Redmi K30 Ultra with the Dimensity 1000 Plus chip, we were capped at 4K 30 fps. That is not the case with the Realme X7 Pro. We get a nice and smooth 4K 60 fps with electronic image stabilization. Unfortunately for this wonderful X7 Pro though, yes, we do have 1080p at 30 fps ultra wide, no 60 fps option over here for ultra wide, and we don't have a 4K option for ultra wide at all, which kind of stinks. We also have ultra steady mode. It is currently off at the current moment, and we can enable it with 1080p 60 fps, though it does not look good at all. You really do lose a lot of quality when you enable the ultra steady mode. We have Realme UI version 1 still skinned over Android 10. The Realme X2 Pro took around 6 months to get the update to Android 10 from Android 9, so expect something similar around April next year to get the upgrade to Android 11 on the X7 Pro. Software feels nice and fluid, pretty much as stock as I said in previous Realme reviews on the X2 Pro and X50 Pro. We have some dynamic wallpapers, nothing quite as extravagant as you see on the Xiaomi's, but we do have a little customization options here, such as changing the style of the icons as well as a smart sidebar. We also have edge lighting when you do receive a notification. High performance mode is always a big plus for benchmarking and gaming. We can check out our app use time, and we can even clone apps, but you do see this on many smartphones these days. We also have super nighttime standby mode in order to preserve battery life while you're sleeping. And we do have full screen gestures over here, the standard ones where you swipe in from each side of the device, but I do like how we can still enable the full screen gestures from the bottom corners, such as like Samsung does, which is really awesome. We also have a couple extra little features such as lock in an app, which we see on many phones these days, as well as split screen. I don't really use split screen that often. What I would use though is a pop-up floating window, and it is a lot easier to control than seen in my review on the Redmi K30 Ultra. The haptics feel better as well, even better than the K30 Ultra, and we have Dolby Atmos, which is something that was lacking in the competitor K30 Ultra. We also have game space over here, similar to Game Turbo that you see on the Redmi and Xiaomi phones. So we've enabled that, and we're going to be using the Dimensity 1000 Plus octa-core chipset run on 7nm technology to run a couple 120Hz games. We have no FPS cap running our first game here, which is Bullet Force, but unfortunately it is capping at around 60 FPS, which sucks. The next game that we have over here is indeed Dead Trigger 2. It does allow us to enable 120 FPS, but once again we're capping at 60, which sucks on a 120Hz smartphone. Real Racing 3 also has no frames per second cap, but once again, the Dimensity 1000 Plus is capping us at 60 FPS, though I think this is more with regards to software than actual hardware. Like I said, we have that Dimensity processor. We're going to use it to test out AnTuTu version 8.4.5 over here, and at the start of the test we're checking our battery and CPU drain and heat dissipation, which we'll compare at the end of running the test. I'm going to speed through it. I'll bring you guys a more comprehensive one later on in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. And when it comes to battery drain, we went down by just -4%. The K30 Ultra dropped by -5%. The battery increased by 7.7 degrees in Celsius, where the K30 Ultra only jumped up by 2.7, and the CPU reached a peak of 49 degrees Celsius, where the K30 Ultra reached a peak of 50. When it comes to final scores over here, the Realme X7 Pro with the same chipset as the K30 Ultra definitely beat it with 511,000 points, as opposed to almost 480,000 on the K30 Ultra. It did not beat the Snapdragon 865 Plus and 865, but I wasn't expecting that since those are extremely premium chipsets. But it did indeed beat the 855 Plus, 855 by quite a large margin for a much cheaper chipset. Now we're moving on to Geekbench 5.2 over here to test out CPU, OpenCL, and Vulkan GPU APIs. We couldn't do this on the Redmi K30 Ultra, it just didn't work on the phone. But looking at the results over here for single core and multi-core, it actually beat the 855 Plus and 855, not too far off the 865 and 865 Plus. When it comes to OpenCL GPU API, it actually beat the 865 Plus and 865, as well as last year's processors too. Very impressive here from Realme. When it comes to Vulkan, it didn't quite measure up to the 865 Plus, but it beat the 865, the 855 Plus, and 855 once more. The Realme X7 Pro is definitely a breath of fresh air. I say that from just looking at that wonderful back frosted glass design with the bold Dare to Leap logo. We have a decent camera setup, though nothing to really write home about, and we have some really awesome features, including that wonderful 6.55-inch AMOLED panel, which actually has decent PPI for a 6.55-inch display. Though more importantly, we have that wonderful 120Hz option and some new things bringing to the board here, such as smooth scrolling. Though with the Dare to Leap Realme X7 Pro, it cannot quite match up to the expensive premium phones of today, though it definitely gives the K30 Ultra a run for its money, making it one of my favorite mid-range phones of 2020.